and welcome to the video. In this video, will be setting up a new terrarium for the Armadillidium gestroid that I had ordered. In this simple setup, I got the nice glass greenhouse thinking that both sides were ventilated, but it appears only one side was ventilated on opening. So I'll probably have to rehouse these and think about a different setup for this thing later down the road. But for now, we'll go ahead and set this one up today. We'll go ahead and give it a quick spritz out with some water and then wipe everything out, just to remove any debris or chemical that may be left on it from its making or shipping. Who knows? I got these fancy little tongs, so I'm gonna go ahead and use them. Anyways, let's move on to the drainage layer. I've got this beautiful lava rock that's all crushed up. I'm going to give it a quick rinse to remove all the excess debris from it, so that way it's a little more purty down there. After it's all thoroughly washed, I'm going to go ahead and just spread it around evenly as I can. Trying not to add too much in the way of the liquid. Ideally, I would have let this dry out, but I was a little impatient in setting up this terrarium. Alrighty, let's go ahead and move on to the next stage, which is a filter mesh. I went ahead and moved it over and placed the terrarium on cut and cut it to shape. It's okay that it's a little bigger. I've heard that letting it fold over the sides helps keep stuff in the top spot. Next, I'll be adding a charcoal layer so that way it can help filter the water as it seeps down from the soil. Next will be substrate. This substrate smells kind of funky, if I'm being honest. The reviews were not lying, but overall, it's worked out quite nicely for the two different isopods that I set up using it. At this stage, I like to kind of envision what kind of landscape I'm going with. I knew I wanted to make some sort of cave opening in one of the corners and make reference to some sort of buried skull or some decaying animal in the other. Because I had bought in a mink and a wolf, not a wolf, but a fox skull. Gave the soil a bit of a spritz down so that way it holds shape a little better. Now I'm going in with my skull bits and trying to position them. I ended up digging out all the soil so that way I could better fit the skull in after I got it to shape. Here I am setting it in and adjusting it so that way it looks buried into the soil. Then I'm re-evening out the soil around it so that way the teeth are still showing, but not completely. Onwards, I'll move on to the cork bark, the hardscape of it, dumping in the little bits from the bag. This was a little tricky. I knew I kind of wanted to make a cave opening with it, but I was unsure of how I would. At first, I thought maybe I'll skip that and go for some tree roots, but then I quickly scrapped that because I was like, it's just not going to work. And yeah, I could just lay them all in there willy-nilly. But I also don't really like that look. I wanted this to be both as much of a display case as it is a habitat for these guys. There's always some trial and error period, and I'm very visual. I ended up breaking this chunk off and putting it on top and kind of burying another piece underneath it. This way, I think it gave me quite the nice little cave opening because all the soil I ended up throwing on top came out of it. So I had a nice deep area in there for them. I figured this would act as the main hide and by making the top of the cave removable, allow me to go in there and see them. I'm now fixing the jawbone so that way it's a bit better orientated. I wasn't happy with how crooked it was lying. Onwards, let's move on to the moisture layer or the moisture gradient. Now, I did not wring the moss out as good as I needed to. So I ended up removing a bunch of it later down the road. So that way I wouldn't have as much mold issues. But sadly, because I didn't wring out the moss as much, I did end up having a little bit of mold breakout. Thankfully, that the springtails will go ahead and eat most of the mold that breaks out that is available to them. And as their numbers grow, the mold will quickly disappear. So they breed pretty fast compared to the isopods. So I'm pretty confident that they'll quickly fix the issue. It'll just be a little bit of a dark age for the terrarium. So I'm currently now adding some live mosses to help give the terrarium a bit more of a greenery. This was very, very exhausting because I ended up shredding the moss down into its individual clumps to remove a bunch of the seeds and a bunch of other things that were in it, pine needles mainly. And afterwards, I was left with basically just little itty bitty plants, and I ended up planting the whole hillside there with as much of it as I could and as deeply as I could. I think it ended up with a brilliant after effect. So I have a mix of fern moss and what I believe to be some sort of star moss. I'm not sure what it is to be exact. I'm sure somebody down in the comments could correctly identify both of these. I am using sphagnum as the main moisture absorber in here, although I probably could have gone away with just using those mosses. Like I said, it was extremely detail orientated. I sat there with my tweezers and I kept going at it, one after another. I ended up putting a little bit of it in the sphagnum moss, which I'm gonna be honest, later down the road, did not do as well as I thought it would. I think it was the first section to mold out, and if I'm being honest. Alrighty, now I'm going in and I'm tearing up some leaves and putting in some of the bigger ones and creating a nice leaf litter pile. So that way it looks a little more naturalist, kind of leads into the skull. I played around with sticking leaves and their stems into the skull. And I was aiming for more of a feather braid pattern, something to accentuate the skull. Eventually all decor items in this terrarium may or may not get eaten by the isopods and springtails. So it's a naturalistic look at decomposition. And I think it turned out wonderfully. As you can see by the little hydrometer in there, it's quite humid. Let us go ahead and actually take a look at the buggos that are going to be going into here. I've got some orange springtails. They're like a Y species. Originates in Asia. But they came in this nice little container. 15 of them is what was listed. So, but as you can see, there are a bit more than 15. More like 1,500. Afterwards, we got the Armadillidium gestroi, originating from Spain. Although I did not get these as a wild type. These are a bred type. Both of them are bred types. So I got 12 of the Armadillidium gestroi. And as you can see, they're babies, little guys. So it'll become some time before these will get to breeding. Although I already have a favorite one. I got them from Creative Cultivate. It was whatever was on Amazon, if I'm being honest. Here they are, in all of their spotted glory. Look at these gorgeous bugs. Let's get them in the enclosure right away. First things first, I gotta break this springtail colony into 3. I want a breeding population in a population in both terrariums that I'm setting up currently. I accidentally dropped a little bit out here. There you go. As you can see, I got some eggshells down for them. I'm going to go ahead and set them in. Look at that one falling. I quickly changed my mind on this and decided to dump them in because they really weren't able to climb out of there too well. Nor did it seem like they were very inclined to. But they're just gorgeous. So according to the internet, they evolved to mimic millipedes in their local range or centipedes in their local range, one of the two. And that's where they got these gorgeous colorings from. One of these lovely isopods has a albino patch on them. So I'm wondering if I might be able to later down the road select this trait out if it's available. So go ahead and enjoy the clips that follow this of the armadilliums, gestroids, simply exploring their new terrarium. It was at this moment I realized they could leave. Thankfully, she decided to go on down. So, we don't have to worry about that right now. I did manage to get some clips of them crawling around the skull and the teeth, which is really cool looking. Look at this one hanging upside down. And here is one nibbling away at some of the dried up eggshells that I put into the enclosure. Enjoy. After eating her fill, she goes ahead and wanders away. And if you notice, this is the armadillium I was talking about earlier with the albino spot on their rear. I'll have to see if this holds genetically or if it's just this isopod. Well, as we near the end of the video, if you've watched all the way through, I would thoroughly appreciate a like and a subscribe. If anything, just remind yourself for the gummy worms.